Hello surf skating friends, Steve here, and this is a video for newbies, and I want to give you 3 quick steps to do when you first open your surf skate. And I'm making this video because I've been working with some newbies lately and I keep seeing the same thing over and over again, and that is that they're almost like afraid of their surf skate. It's like they're afraid they're going to break it, they don't know what they're doing, and especially if you're new to any board sports and you've never worked with a skateboard or a longboard and you don't know all of the parts. And so I want to just help you in that process to not be afraid of your surf skate. And the bigger theme of all these steps is you're just out of the box starting to develop a relationship with your surf skate, because it really is a relationship. You're going to be spending a lot of time on this board, and I don't know about you, but as a man, all of my surf skates are sweet, beautiful ladies, and I have relationships with all of them. If you're a woman, maybe you can refer to your surf skate as a man or whatever. But the point is, have a relationship with your surf skate. Don't be afraid of it. This maintenance side of things is a really big part of surf skating. You really want, because adjusting, for example, if you don't know how to adjust things, in fact, I've worked with newbies where they've had their board for 3 or 4 months, and I first looked at it and they hadn't done a single thing. They hadn't adjusted their truck, their pivot cup was squeaking, all kinds of stuff, and they just don't know. So you just want to know this maintenance side of it really well. So the 3 things that we're going to do when we unpack our surf skate before riding it is, first, we're going to get rid of any squeaking noises. Secondly, we're going to make sure that our wheels are spinning properly. And then the third thing is we're just going to look at the surf skate truck and make sure that it's working properly, make sure it's not making any noise, and make any adjustments as needed. And in this video, I'm working with just a basic Carver CX bushing-based system. But if you've got a spring-based system like a Meraki or a Smooth Star Thruster or a Carver C7, you're going to want to know how to take care of those as well. And you can look on my channel for the maintenance videos on those other spring-based systems as well. All right, so the first thing I want to do with any surf skate is eliminate squeaking. I've bought 40 surf skates and I have yet to open a single one that didn't squeak right out of the box. And 90% of the time, your squeaking is going to come out of your pivot cup. And your pivot cup is where your truck sits into right there, and where it rotates. It's where it pivots. That's why it's called a pivot cup. And you can see how I'm going to just step on this. This is the loaded Bolsa, by the way. I got it a few days ago and I haven't even ridden it yet because I've been waiting to do this video. But let's just step on this and I'm going to show you how right out of the box. So let's take care of that pivot cup squeak. First thing we're going to do is just remove our kingpin nut right there. Don't be afraid of it. You're not going to break it, especially on a CX truck. There's no spring to break. So then we just slide this off, and that piece is going to come off like so, and that's the piece that sits into your pivot cup. And you can see how there's nothing in that pivot cup. I've opened a few Carvers lately that I've gotten, and they actually put some lube in there, but it actually still squeaks regardless. But you can see that they don't have, that's bone dry in there, and that's why it squeaks. And sometimes you'll get squeaking out of the bushings too, but 90% of the time it's going to be that pivot cup. Very, very simple to fix a pivot cup squeak. This bushing is kind of hard on there, but all we're going to do is you're going to take some paraffin wax, household paraffin wax. There's some waxes that are different than paraffin, so make sure you're getting just that basic household paraffin wax. And all we're going to do is put some wax shavings in that pivot cup, like so. Super, super simple. And I'm sure that's probably overkill. It doesn't take a whole lot, but that will take care of that squeak nicely. Okay. And so now we will put our washer on bottom, followed by the bushing, the bottom bushing. And then we'll put our hanger back on. And on this setup, I actually have to kind of lift this washer and bushing a little bit so that this will sit over that and then slide down into that pivot cup nice and easy like so. Super simple. Now we're going to put our top bushing back on, followed by our washer, and followed by our kingpin nut. And we will come back to adjusting this truck. But that's it. No squeak. That was it. Simple, simple. Let's do the same thing on the back. And around. In fact, I'm just going to make this easy. We'll just put some shavings out here, and then I can just throw them in that pivot cup like so. And that's plenty. No pivot cup squeak. So first step done. We've got our pivot cups taken care of and we got no squeak on this board. Second thing I'm going to do is just make sure the wheels are spinning properly. And this is really simple. It's just that sometimes out of the factory, maybe the bearings aren't completely pushed into the wheel and so you have a spacing issue, or maybe this is tightened down. But basically, to check that, we're just going to do a wheel spin here. And we're going to just see if any of them stop prematurely. And you can tell that this one's a little bit tighter than this one. One of the things that'll happen is if you don't have the proper spacing in the wheels for the bearings, if you tighten down the nut on that wheel, it will stop them from spinning. In the ideal world, when you have proper bearing spacing with the wheel spacing, you should be able to completely tighten down that nut tight and the bearings will still spin. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's okay. And in that case, really all you want to do is just kind of back that nut off slightly, but you don't want to back it off too much, because then, see, if I back this nut off this far, you're going to hear, or I don't know if you can see this or hear this, there's a little bit of play in that. So you don't want that play. But if you have a setup where, like for example, if I just tighten this down all the way, and see these are, you can see how that's actually really good. I've really got that cranked. That's exactly what you want. But a lot of times you'll do that spin test and it's not going to roll easily. So a couple things you can do on that. You might even want to take the wheel off and then just push those, use a skate tool like this. Get a skate tool like this. You really need one like this. They have them like this. Grab a skate tool like this, and this is a bearing tool. And so really what you can do to check this, if you've got a wheel that's not spinning good, one possible thing to check is to take the wheel off and just use your, oh, these are nice and stuck. Sometimes you'll get that. And then a lot of times I'll have to leverage, being careful, you don't want to hurt your bearings, but I just want to just kind of leverage that. Sometimes your bearings will stick like that. That's no big deal. Again, if you've got that wheel stuck, you'll just take your bearing tool and you'll just make sure that both of those bearings are really secured tightly in there. Like so. And this didn't come with any speed rings, which is kind of interesting to me. Sometimes they don't. Usually they do. Your speed rings are, here, let me get you a speed ring. This is a speed ring, just this tiny little piece. Typically though, each wheel will come with 2 speed rings, and they're supposed to go one right here. And the purpose of these is to eliminate friction. It's hard for them to machine this edge good on companies, and so the speed ring creates make sure you have a really flat edge there for that bearing to spin freely. So you should have speed rings, and you'll have one go over the top of your axle there. You'll put your wheel on, and then the other speed ring should go over the top there. But since this didn't come with speed rings, oh, and by the way, when in doubt, if you don't have speed rings, or if you don't have enough speed rings, let's say you just have 4 instead of 8, as a rule, you want to make sure you put the ones that you have on this and not on top of the wheel, because this machined edge is going to give you a bigger issue than on the top end. So we'll put that speed ring back on. If we had another speed ring, that speed ring would go over the top there, and then we would just put our nut back on. And there's our spin test. And there is a little bit of friction. I'm just going to back that off just a touch. Just a touch. It's real delicate. And this is that relationship I talk about. You know, it really is. You want to care about this stuff, and you can see how that spins easier with just the slightest little coming off of that nut. So I think we're good on our spinning wheels. That's how you take care of that. Now the final step is to work with the Surfskate truck specifically. And there's a couple things I want to do on that. The very first thing I want to do is just make sure that everything is in proper working order. In this case, this is the Carver CX. It's just a bushing based system, so there's really not anything to worry about. It's like, yeah, we're working. It's all put together. But if you're dealing with something like the Yao Meraki or the Smooth Star Thruster, that's a different thing. And then the second thing I'm going going to do is I'm going to do some adjusting on it. Now, as a newbie, you might not know exactly how to adjust or if you even need to or want to adjust. So that might be something that you'll do as you ride, not necessarily before you ride, but adjusting is a big part of the process. And again, I bring that up because I keep seeing all these newbies who are afraid to adjust. They don't know how to adjust. They are afraid they're going to break something. Don't be afraid. It's experiment. It's all about personal preference. Some people like their trucks tighter. Some people like their trucks looser. And you're just going to want to play with that. But have that mindset of, I'm always adjusting. Always. People ask me, do you adjust your trucks? And I'm like, yeah, of course. They're made to, so that you can suit the ride to your preference. Speaking of that, let me show you something on the Carver CX. Now, for me personally, since the Carver CX especially is one of the tighter truck systems, it's just a bushing, not a spring. I personally like to ride the CX as loose as possible. So typically, when you open it up, you'll see some of that bolt sticking up there, which makes it tighter, and I just want that CX looser. So personally, every time I get a CX, I just back that nut off until it's basically flush with that bolt. Although, kind of as a rule of thumb, is if you can spin that washer, you might have it a little bit too loose. There might be a little bit, see, there's kind of some play in that, which we don't really want. You can see that sliding off of the bushing like so, and that's going to create kind of a weird sensation in the ride. So we'll just make sure that you can't spin that washer, and now we've got all of the flexibility without any of that looseness around the moving parts there. Now, let's just give this a quick, I call it the island test. And I just ride around my little kitchen island here. And let's make sure that my adjustments on my truck, that I'm loose enough and that I'm not making any squeaking noise. And then we're off to the races to take this sweet girl out for a ride. We're gonna just ride it around and we're gonna just test for squeaking. And we got no squeaking. And I'm testing for, let's not hit the carpet here. But I'm testing for the looseness of my truck and make sure that that's all adjusted how I want it to. And we're golden. We got a nice loose CX. We got zero squeaking. We are ready to take this baby out for a ride. So newbies, I hope you find this helpful. Don't be afraid of your surf skate. Develop a relationship with it. Really know your moving parts. And that's going to help you a lot in your surf skating journey.